What would you do if your husband threw money at your face, calling you heartless for helping his dying ex-girlfriend? This is Maya's story. A woman who gave up everything for love, only to discover that sometimes the people we save don't deserve our sacrifice, and sometimes losing everything is exactly what we need to find ourselves. Tu Fa Fei Chapter 1T. The diagnosis that changed everything. Daniel's ex-girlfriend got a cancer diagnosis that shattered our world. I discreetly sent her some money anonymously. I thought I was being kind, being human, but my attempt to help remained uncovered. Daniel hurled the bank card at me angrily. His eyes burned with rage I'd never seen before. We're already married. What more do you want? Do you intend to shame someone who's dying with money? I remained silent, looking at him calmly. The man I'd loved since we were 16, now felt like a stranger. Daniel, I said quietly, you were the one who asked me to marry you first. But he wasn't listening anymore. The day we learned about Lily's cancer coincided with our anniversary getaway. As I was packing our suitcase, I turned to Daniel with something so simple, so normal. Should I include this dark green tea? I asked. Instead of responding, he stared blankly at his phone. His face had gone completely white. He looked detached from reality, like he was somewhere else entirely. Daniel, I called out again. He finally looked up at me. His eyes were distant, afraid. Mia, he hesitated, struggling with the words. What's wrong? Lily is dying. And after those 3 words, he avoided my gaze completely. He hurried out the door, moving with such urgency, as if every moment was critical. As if he might not see her again. I stood there in our bedroom, holding that green tie. The anniversary trip we'd planned for months suddenly didn't matter anymore. Kafanfe Chapter 20. And at the hospital. Upon reaching the hospital, I found Daniel already with Lily. He had just reviewed her diagnosis, his face somber and lost. The confident man I married looked broken. When did this happen? He asked her, his voice barely a whisper. Lily was curled up on the hospital bed. Her complexion was pale and almost translucent. She looked so young, so fragile. Last month, during a routine checkup, she said weakly. The doctor said it's too advanced. There's no hope for a cure. Before she could continue, she noticed me in the doorway. Tears began streaming down her face uncontrollably. I'm sorry, Mia, she sobbed. I didn't mean to interfere with your marriage. I'm just so terrified. I'm only 24. I don't want to die. The raw fear in her voice hit me like a punch. 24 years old. The same age I was when I came back from studying abroad. Daniel turned to see me, his expression darkening with something that looked like accusation. Why are you here? His tone was cold, defensive. At that moment, mentioning our planned anniversary trip felt inappropriate. So I lowered my eyes and gently offered to help. I just wanted to see if there's anything I can do. No, it's fine. Daniel snapped harshly before Lily could respond. You should leave. As I walked away reluctantly, I glanced back one last time. Daniel was holding Lily tightly. Her face rested on his shoulder, eyes closed, tears flowing freely. You're everything I have, she whispered to him. Daniel. I have nothing but you. Daniel held her even tighter, his voice strained with emotion. I understand. It was clear they shared something profound. Something I wasn't part of. Something that went beyond the boundaries of my marriage. I stood there, overwhelmed with emotions yet powerless. In the shadow of death, the emotions of the living seemed trivial. But I was still his wife. And that had to count for something, didn't it? Fight Chapter 30. Our love story. Daniel and I had been childhood sweethearts, dating since we were 16. Back then, love felt simple, pure, like nothing could ever come between us. However, due to family changes, I had to move abroad for my studies. I was uncertain of when I would return. This uncertainty led me to make the hardest decision of my young life. I broke up with Daniel. He was furious, accusing me of not trusting him to handle a long-distance relationship. His words cut deep, but I thought I was protecting both of us from the pain of uncertainty. On my departure day, he arrived at the airport with teary eyes. Maya, he said, his voice breaking, I'll wait for you to come back. No matter how long it takes, I'll always wait. His promise became my lifeline. It helped me endure the toughest days alone in a foreign country. I threw myself into my studies, completing a 5-year course in just 3 years. I was so eager to come home, to come back to him. But upon my return, Daniel had a new girlfriend, a young and pretty girl named Lily, who was his junior in school. I learned she had pursued Daniel for a long time, dedicating 2 years before he reluctantly agreed to be with her. 2 years. She'd spent 2 years winning his heart while I was gone. After my return, a group of childhood friends met up for dinner. The conversation inevitably turned to relationships. She's so needy, someone said about Lily. She follows Daniel everywhere. If he drinks, she stays to help him sober up. If he's ill, she cooks and takes care of him. Another friend laughed. I heard she even tried to join our gathering today. Daniel frowned, clearly irritated. Don't bring her up. Right, I forgot. Now that Maya's back, Daniel should probably end things with her. I instinctively looked at Daniel, hoping to see some sign, some indication of what he was thinking. But he wasn't paying attention to the conversation. His head was down, eyes fixed on his phone. The gathering ended on a sour note. Later, Daniel offered to drive me home, but his tense demeanor suggested he didn't genuinely want to. I could feel the obligation in his offer. No need, I said calmly. I didn't drink, and I can drive myself. He seemed relieved and left immediately. Later, I discovered that day was Lily's birthday. She had been photographed on a Ferris wheel, holding a birthday cake, forcing a smile for the camera. She looked so young, so hopeful. Daniel had rushed through the night to reach her just before midnight. While I went home to an empty house. Kyo-Fae Chapter 40 The Shaver. When I got home, my partially packed luggage was still scattered in the bedroom. I began repacking piece by piece, trying to process everything that had changed. Reaching for my toiletry bag, I paused. Inside was an electric shaver. It was slightly old and bright sky blue, something Daniel would never typically buy for himself. So who gave it to him? The answer was clear, but I stared at it for a long moment anyway. Then I placed it back in the drawer, as if hiding the evidence could make it hurt less. After dark, Daniel finally returned home. His eyes were bloodshot, corners slightly red, and his expression wary. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world. I approached him calmly. I've cancelled the flight and the hotel. As for my parents, when we return this weekend, we can tell them that what we promised to bring might not arrive this time. We'll get more on our next trip abroad. I was simply discussing our cancelled anniversary plans. Being practical, being understanding. Suddenly, Daniel became angry. He stared into my eyes with a harsh tone I'd never heard before. Why are you even telling me this? Can't you handle such a minor issue yourself? I froze. The words hit me like a slap. I suddenly recalled years ago, when we first started dating in high school. We were in different classes, and I had trouble with some girls. I dealt with it on my own without telling Daniel. Yet he found out anyway. He intervened, chasing the girls away, then confronted me angrily. Why didn't you tell me when you were in trouble? I could have helped you. I could manage it myself, I had said. But I'm your boyfriend. Teenage Daniel had insisted. He was so determined to be involved, visiting me every night for 2 weeks until he gradually made me share everything with him. He wanted to know about my activities, my problems, my life. Now, 8 years later, he was saying the opposite. Why are you even telling me this? Can't you handle such a minor issue yourself? It seemed Daniel realized he was losing his composure, so he softened slightly. Sorry, Mia. I'm just feeling a bit stressed. Stressed about his ex-girlfriend's cancer diagnosis. I'm going to take a shower, I said quietly. When I emerged, Daniel was nowhere to be seen. I searched the house and found him on the upstairs terrace, smoking cigarette after cigarette. Daniel wasn't a habitual smoker. The last time I'd seen him smoke was after a major fight with Lily, when they'd broken up temporarily. He hadn't smoked since. Until that night. I found him on the balcony, staring into the starry northern sky. In the distance, the city's tallest Ferris wheel stood illuminated against the darkness. Just like before, I didn't say anything. I quietly returned to the bedroom, giving him space to process whatever he was feeling. But lying in bed alone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing him all over again. Femme Chapter 5e The Missing Shaver. The next morning, I woke up with a splitting headache. I've always struggled with migraines, so I searched through the medicine cabinet for painkillers. My temples were pounding, making it hard to think clearly. Suddenly, Daniel stormed out of the bathroom, furious. Where is my shaver? My temples throbbed even harder. Before I could respond, he grabbed my wrist tightly, his grip painful and demanding. Mia, where is my shaver? He asked again. It's in the bedside drawer, I managed to say. Daniel didn't say another word. He began searching frantically for the shaver. The sky blue shaver that Lily had given him. I rubbed my sore wrist and found some painkillers, taking 2 pills. My head felt like it was splitting in half, but Daniel didn't notice. He was too focused on finding that gift from his ex-girlfriend. Lily's cancer diagnosis had completely consumed Daniel's thoughts. There was no room left for my headache. To him, it was just a minor issue. In the days that followed, Daniel didn't go to work. Instead, he spent his time contacting every top oncologist in the city. They all confirmed the same devastating prognosis. Lily's cancer was terminal. No treatment could offer a cure, only a slight extension of her life. Each confirmation deepened the pain on Daniel's face. He looked like he was dying inside, piece by piece. I watched my husband suffering for another woman, and I didn't know how to feel about it. 2 Vampy Chapter 6c The lipstick scene. One evening, while driving home from work, I saw something that made my heart stop. Daniel and Lily were in our neighborhood yard. Compared to before, Lily looked even thinner, more fragile. She had changed out of her blue and white striped hospital gown and was wearing a wine-red slip dress. She was sitting on the swing in the yard, the golden-red sunset bathing her in a warm, ethereal glow. The light contrasted beautifully with her pale face, making her look almost angelic. And there was Daniel, kneeling on one knee before her, carefully applying lipstick to her pale lips. The scene was intimate, tender, heartbreaking. I watched quietly from my car, unable to look away. At that moment, I couldn't help but think that perhaps Daniel's biggest regret was marrying me instead of being free to love her completely. I stayed at a nearby bar until midnight, nursing a single mojito I never touched. I just sat there, listening to the band play, trying to process what I'd witnessed. Daniel finally seemed to realize I wasn't home, so he called me. "Mia, where are you?" Before I could respond, the sound of the band playing filled the phone. Daniel paused, listening to the music in the background. "I'll come get you," he said quietly. By the time he arrived, the band had finished their last song and left the stage. I was sitting in a corner, the untouched mojito still on the table before me. Daniel stood in front of me, the dim bar light giving his face a solemn, guilty look. "Why did you come here alone to drink?" he asked. "I didn't drink," I replied honestly. "I just ordered it and sat here listening to music." Hearing this, Daniel's expression softened slightly. He took my hand gently. "Let's go home." As I got into the car, I smelled the familiar scent of hospital disinfectant clinging to his clothes. It was clear he had only remembered me after taking Lily back to the hospital for the night. "How's Lily doing?" I asked. In truth, since learning about her illness, I had kept quiet about it with Daniel. This was the first time I had brought her up directly. He couldn't avoid the topic anymore. "Not well," he said, his voice heavy. "I've arranged for the best doctors to treat her, but the situation remains grim." Realizing how that sounded, he quickly added, "Maya, don't get me wrong. I just feel guilty for not treating her better before. I want to make it up to her." That was the truth. Friends back home had told me Daniel hadn't treated Lily well during their relationship. 6 months after I went abroad, Daniel met Lily. She was grateful for his help with her problems, and her gratitude blossomed into love. Over 2 years, no matter how distant or sarcastic Daniel was, she remained passionately devoted. Eventually, he was moved by her persistence. But even while dating, Lily always gave more than she received. Besides, Daniel's voice cracked slightly. "She's about to die." The helplessness and guilt that come when facing terminal illness. These were feelings I understood too well. At that moment, I felt utterly powerless. Even though Daniel was my husband and I was his legal wife, I felt like an outsider in this tragedy. The rest of the car ride passed in silence. Hifa Chapter 70 The job interview. When I suggested we visit Lily in the hospital together, Daniel's initial reaction was suspicion. "Is that okay?" I asked, pretending not to notice his hesitation. After a few seconds, Daniel finally agreed. "It's fine." Perhaps due to recent improvements in her treatment, Lily looked much better when we arrived. After some conversation, she mentioned wanting to be discharged and return to work. "I know it's impossible to be fully cured," she said, looking at Daniel with hopeful eyes. "But in my last few months, I want to live as normally as possible. Is that okay?" Naturally, Daniel didn't refuse her request. Anyone could see how much he wanted to give her whatever happiness he could. Daniel suggested arranging a job for Lily at his company, but she immediately declined. No, that wouldn't be fair. I want to find a job on my own merit." Her pride was admirable, even in her condition. Unsurprisingly, Daniel turned to me. His expression was expectant, almost demanding. "I'll pay her salary. You don't have to assign her any actual work. It won't affect you at all." I couldn't help but smirk sarcastically. "Daniel, what exactly do you think I am?" He froze briefly, then sighed in frustration. "But she's sick." "Yes, she's sick. She has cancer. She's dying. So whatever she wants to do, we healthy people have to accommodate her unconditionally." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I couldn't take them back. After a long pause, I took a business card from my bag and handed it to him calmly. "I'll give you the HR contact. Let her submit a resume and go through the normal interview process." Daniel didn't take the card. Instead, he looked at me with a cold stare, as if seeing me for the first time. "Ma, being so petty with someone who's about to die. You make me feel scared." He walked away, leaving me standing there alone. Even after Daniel left, I stood motionless in the hospital corridor, holding on to my last shred of dignity. A young girl then approached me from behind, tapped my shoulder gently, and said, "Mia, your pants are dirty." I snapped out of my thoughts and thanked her. In reality, my lower back had been sore since I woke up that morning. My period had started early while I was in the hospital corridor. Daniel was so preoccupied with Lily that he didn't notice me buying sanitary pads from the convenience store or using the bathroom multiple times. Years ago, when I had my first period at school, it was chaotic and embarrassing. Daniel went to the school shop to buy sanitary pads and tied his jacket around my waist to hide the stain, but that was when Daniel was only 14 years old. When I was the only girl who mattered to him. Tu Fan Fei Chapter 80, the anonymous gift. I had my assistant look into Lily's background. It wasn't much different from what I had imagined. She had a tragic life. No loving parents, and she'd always lived in poverty. Daniel was the only source of light in her dark world. Without his help, she might not have been able to afford her cancer treatment. So I had my assistant transfer money to Lily's account under her family's name. Not employing her at my company was the last boundary I maintained in our marriage. But sending her money, that was an act of compassion as a fellow human being. I didn't expect Daniel to discover it. That night when I returned home, I turned on the lights and saw Daniel standing by the entrance, staring blankly at me. "You're home early today," I said, surprised. His response was to throw a bank card at my face. It hit me near my eye, sending sharp pain spreading from my temple. The pain was so intense it made my fingers curl in discomfort. Daniel approached me, gripping my wrist tightly, his voice filled with rage. "We're married now. What more do you want? Why are you humiliating her by giving her money?" "I didn't. Maya," he interrupted, his grip tightening. "You've had a wealthy and perfect family since childhood. You studied at the best schools abroad, returned, and joined your family's company. I broke up with her and married you. Everything has gone smoothly for you." His words were like daggers. "But she has nothing. Does humiliating her make you feel even more superior in your noble life?" I closed my eyes, countless memories flashing through my mind like a fragmented movie. All the times he'd protected me, loved me, chosen me, now felt like distant dreams. "Daniel?" I tried to keep my voice calm, but there was still a tremor in it. "You can't talk to me like this. You can't." Daniel released my hand and took a step back. He looked at me as if he wanted to say something, but his phone rang at that moment. He pulled it out, and Lily's name appeared on the screen. Daniel's expression changed instantly. Without hesitation, he brushed past me and left the room. I stared at the painting on the wall, gently pressing the injury near my eye. The pain intensified, but somehow, it felt like nothing compared to the pain in my chest. Tu Fan Fei Chapter 19. Alone again after that night, Daniel didn't come home for several days. He didn't contact me, but I knew why. Lily's condition had worsened. She was in unbearable pain, crying and calling for Daniel. And Daniel, who had always been there for me, chose to go to her without hesitation. I went to a distant hospital for a full-body checkup. The doctor looked at my results with concern. "Miss Lowe," she said sternly, "you need to find a way to release your emotions. It will be beneficial for your mental and physical health." I remained silent for a long time. Finally, I said, "Thank you, but I don't have anyone to talk to. Who could I even confide in?" The doctor looked at me with pity, but she didn't have an answer. During those 3 years abroad, at my lowest point, I fainted from a stomach hemorrhage and was hospitalized by a barely acquainted classmate. Upon discharge, while walking through a quiet street, I was caught in a random shootout. A bullet grazed my waist. I had grown accustomed to being alone, especially since Daniel and I were broken up when I returned. He already had Lily by his side. I couldn't say anything about their relationship. Accepting Daniel's proposal was admittedly selfish. On countless nights when I could barely hold on, I thought of the boy who had stood at the airport with red eyes, telling me he'd wait for me. That thought always gave me just a little more courage to keep going. But maybe that boy was gone forever. Tu Fan Fei Chapter 10 of the hospital encounter. As I reflected on the past, I slowly walked out of the hospital. Suddenly, someone stood before me, blocking my path. I looked up to see Daniel staring at me with a cold and frightening expression. His voice was filled with fear. "Mia, why are you at the hospital?" I froze for a moment, then suddenly understood. He was afraid I might end up like Lily, that I might be sick too. So I smiled sadly and said, "Just a checkup." Daniel didn't believe me. His eyes were wild with panic. So I pulled out the checkup report from my bag and handed it to him. I kept the psychological evaluation report to myself. The medical data showed nothing seriously wrong with my body. Daniel's face remained tense as he carefully reviewed the report twice. Then he focused on one line that read, "Old waist injury, no major issues." "What injury is this?" he asked sharply. "Why have I never heard you mention it?" I froze for a moment. "Oh, it was from a shootout abroad. I was slightly injured." The color drained from Daniel's face. As we got into the car, Daniel's gaze was so cold it felt like it could freeze me solid. Feeling helpless, I stared at the passing scenery for a while before deciding to speak. Don't worry, I know my body well. I get a checkup every year. I'm not like Lily. Why didn't you call me? He abruptly interrupted, slamming on the brakes and pulling the car to the side of the road. He unbuckled his seatbelt and leaned toward me, his eyes intense and searching. I knew he was asking about today's checkup, so I looked at him calmly. It was just a routine checkup. Isn't Lily's condition unstable these days? Mentioning Lily caused a complicated emotion to flash in his eyes. It resembled both jealousy and anger, but ultimately, his focus returned to me. When you were injured so badly before, you should have told me, Maya. This time, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. When I was injured, I paused, letting the words sink in. It should have been the day you were finally moved by Lily's persistent pursuit and agreed to be with her. The truth hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. 2 Chapter 11 In guilt and jealousy. In the days that followed, Daniel's attitude toward me became much more affectionate. Beyond our usual exhausting married life, he would even wait for me in his car outside my office building every day when I left work. For a moment, it felt like we were 18 again. Back then, there was nothing between us except pure and intense love. No complications, no other people, no guilt or regret. I kept wondering and speculating about his sudden change until I finally told him directly. You don't have to feel guilty. Even if you had known back then, being half a world away, it wouldn't have made a difference. The smile on Daniel's face instantly disappeared. He took a deep breath. I'm not trying to make it up to you, Mia. You're my wife. We've only been married for a little over a year. This is how things are supposed to be. Before I could respond, Daniel's phone, which was on the dashboard, suddenly lit up. It was a message from Lily. Surprisingly, Daniel didn't respond immediately. He didn't even look at it. I asked him, how is Lily doing? Daniel let out a cold, bitter laugh. What does that have to do with me? She has plenty of people who want to take care of her. She doesn't need me. I thought if he looked into the rearview mirror at that moment, he would see his own eyes filled with burning jealousy. I soon understood why. Poof. On Chapter 112. The other man. At the end of the month, I visited a relative in the hospital and coincidentally found myself on the same floor as Lily. As I passed by her room, I saw her in her hospital gown, her thin fingers repeatedly dialing a number. Her face was streaked with tears, desperate and heartbroken. Beside her stood a young man in a black baseball cap. He cast a dark glance at me through the doorway, then gently said to Lily, "Stop calling. After all, he's married now and needs to go home to his wife." He paused, his voice softening with something that sounded like love. "Lily, you still have me." But Lily acted as if she hadn't heard him. She continued to dial Daniel's number, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded into the phone. "Don't ignore me, Daniel. You promised you'd stay with me until the end." Her voice was broken, desperate, raw with pain. I admit, at that moment, I felt a strange kind of envy. Not of her having someone who loved her so deeply, but of her ability to express her pain so freely. To cry without shame, to beg without dignity, to love without restraint. My life had always followed a predetermined path, leaving me with no choices, no freedom to fall apart. When I returned home, Daniel had already prepared dinner. I casually mentioned, "I saw Lily today. She looks like she's lost more weight." Daniel's entire body went rigid. He stared at me, his expression immediately turning serious and suspicious. "Why did you go see her?" That piercing look snapped me out of my momentary trance. I laughed mockingly. "Don't worry. I wasn't there to cause her any trouble. I just happened to pass by while visiting someone else." "That's not what I meant," Daniel replied, avoiding my gaze, but we both knew what he really meant. He was terrified I might discover something that would threaten whatever fantasy he was living. 2 Fate Chapter 13. The birthday plan. Perhaps to make it up to me, Daniel suggested we go out for my birthday the following month. We could catch a midnight movie, watch back-to-back showings, and then go to the beach to watch the sunrise, he said, his eyes earnest and hopeful. The plan was reminiscent of what we did together on my 16th birthday. I should have refused, but the earnest look in his eyes and the memories he was trying to recreate made me agree. Back then, I had felt suffocated by family pressures. Even though Daniel didn't know the specifics of what was going on, he was sharp enough to notice my distress. So in the middle of the night, he knocked on my window and took me out. We watched 2 movies together, Little Thing Called Love, and Roman Holiday. By the time the movies ended, the sky was pale with dawn. Daniel rode his bike along the coastal highway, eventually stopping at the edge of a cliff, where we watched the golden sun slowly rise from the sea. It was there that he confessed his feelings to me for the first time. But that was a long time ago. So long that now he had to recreate those memories to piece together the scattered details of what we once were. So I agreed. I said yes. Just like that night when we were 16. Even though I knew that watching the same movies couldn't bring back the feelings we once had. It was as if whenever I was with Daniel now, I found myself constantly reminiscing about the past. This meant the current Daniel could no longer balance my love and disappointment. I was simply unwilling to let go, still clinging to those moments when he held on to me and prevented me from falling. 2 Fampe chapter 100, the birthday betrayal. Once I realized this painful truth, I focused on Daniel beside me during the movie. He wasn't watching the film either. Instead, he looked restless, constantly checking his phone. He would pull it out, glance at it, then put it away as if it had burned him. I quietly reminded him, "It's vibrating. Someone's calling you?" Daniel forced a smile. "Don't worry about it. Today I'm here to celebrate your birthday." How pathetic and laughable. I actually believed him. After the movie ended, Daniel finally answered Lily's 28th call of the night. On the other end, I could hear her desperate sobbing through the phone. "Daniel, being sick is so hard. I vomited so much blood. Am I going to die?" As I watched him, Daniel calmly put away his phone, leaned down, and kissed my cheek. "I'm going to the restroom," he said softly, and then he never came back. I waited for a long time outside that secluded private theater by the sea. The ocean waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, and the moon hung heavy in the sky. Eventually, I called Daniel. His phone was off. After hanging up, I saw that Lily had sent me a friend request on WeChat. Against my better judgment, I accepted it. She quickly sent several messages that made my blood run cold. "I'm sorry, Mia. I know today is your birthday. I wanted to prove how important I am to him. You're Daniel's white moonlight. No matter how well I treat him, I can't shake your place in his heart. But now I'm sick and dying. Let me be selfish just once and be a vile woman." White moonlight. That term, it was repulsive. The perfect, untouchable first love that haunts every relationship after. I felt a surge of violent emotion rising within me, but before I could respond, something terrible happened. 2 Fan chapter 50c. The attack. A hand suddenly grabbed me, pulling me into a nearby alley with tremendous force. I fell to the ground in my dress, my knees and elbows scraping against the rough pavement. Sharp pain shot through my body as I hit the walls. I looked up and met a pair of gloomy, crazed eyes. They seemed familiar yet strange. It was the young man in black from Lily's hospital room. "You're Daniel's wife," he said, his voice filled with hatred. "Who do you think you are, making Lily upset?" His face was twisted with rage. "She suffers from cancer day and night, and you, being the happy little princess, aren't satisfied. You have to take away the man she loves, making her last days miserable too." He pulled the brim of his baseball cap lower, looking at me cruelly. "Make it hurt as much as possible, but don't let her pass out." As he spoke, another figure emerged from the shadows. A tall, menacing man with dead eyes stepped forward. The sky slowly began to lighten. The sunrise Daniel and I were supposed to watch together was almost here. But instead of being with my husband, I was trapped in an alley with 2 strangers who wanted to hurt me. Behind the young man, the tall figure raised something heavy above his head. Dust scattered as memories flashed through my mind like broken film. "Why does everyone think Lily is the one to pity?" I whispered. "I'm the one who's lost everything." Pansan chapter 660. Childhood trauma. Those fragmented images became clearer this time. I was 6 years old when my mother was suddenly diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer. Even after a full mastectomy, the cancer cells continued to spread relentlessly. As she lay in bed, her vitality fading day by day, someone came to our house. It was my aunt. My mother's twin sister who looked about 80% like her. She naturally took over my mother's role, assuming everything that had once belonged to her. My father didn't protest because he knew both families had to stay connected for business reasons. I was only 6, too young to understand why I suddenly had to call my aunt Mom, or why, after she had been with us for just 1 month, I had a new half-sister. I only remember that on the day my mother passed away, she held my hand tightly with her last bit of strength. "Mia," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You must live well, live healthily." That sentence became my shackle. Every time I heard Lily say she didn't want to die, a surge of bitter irony rose in my heart. Those who want to live well and be loved are often the ones struck by terminal illness, while those who want to die must live on, carrying their guilt like chains. At home, I wasn't allowed to do many things because I was the eldest daughter, responsible for the Liu family's reputation and future. But my younger sister could act spoiled and do whatever she wanted. When my relationship with Daniel became known, my father sent my aunt to talk to me. She wore my mother's jewelry, the same pearl necklace and bracelet that my mother had treasured. Looking at me with disdain and pity, she said, "You can date, sure, but don't give away your first time. Otherwise, you'll lose your value." She paused, her eyes cold and calculating. "Mia, you're the older sister. You wouldn't want your younger sister to bear your responsibilities, would you?" When I turned 20, she gave me two choices. Either marry a business partner of my father's who was 20 years older than me, someone my father couldn't easily control, or go abroad to study business, return, and help manage the company. I chose the second option, thinking it would give me freedom. But I was naive. Not long after I returned, they began evaluating suitable marriage partners. Their goal was to bind families together and maximize the Liu family's business interests. Their approach was rational, clear-headed, and thorough. Except they never asked for my opinion. Luckily, Daniel proposed to me then. I accepted him, thinking he could still pull me away from the abyss like he had done for so many years. I thought he could keep me from falling into the arranged marriage my family had planned. But by then, Lily was already by his side. Chapter 17. Fighting back. When my dress was torn beyond recognition, I finally saw an opportunity. I grabbed the stiletto heel that had been thrown aside during the struggle. With all the strength I had left, I raised it and struck down forcefully. Warm blood splattered across my face as the tall man collapsed, his body going limp beside me. Holding the blood-stained stiletto, I leaned against the wall and slowly stood up. My legs were shaking, but my resolve was stronger than it had ever been. A few steps away, the young man heard the commotion and turned to look at me. There was a dark shadow of shock in his eyes. "You've got some fight," he said, his voice no longer confident. I took 2 deep breaths, feeling strangely calm despite everything. "It's always been your beloved Lily who's wronged me," I said clearly. "No matter how much you like her, her heart only belongs to Daniel. Even if he's married, even if she's dying, she'll never think of you." "Shut up." He charged at me in a rage, slapping me hard across the face. The sting spread across my cheek, but I tilted my head back and smiled calmly at him. Why shouldn't I have accepted Daniel's proposal? If Lily had fought with Daniel and then wanted to marry you, would you have refused her? He stopped mid-stride, his face contorting with pain. "She's dying," he whispered. "No matter how much you care, you can't cure her cancer. So you take out your anger on someone innocent like me." I paused for a moment, then softly uttered 2 words that cut through everything. "Pathetic." At that moment, I remembered what the doctor had said with such a serious expression. "Miss Liu, you need to find a way to release your emotions. It will do you good." Turns out, he was right. The young man stared at me, dumbfounded. After a while, he let out a heart-wrenching wail, slid down the wall, and curled up on the ground. He cried so miserably, so completely broken. I just stood there watching, feeling somewhat confused. These people always believed they were the most pitiful in the world. Lily, Daniel, and this boy, they were all the same. Somehow, everyone else's pain mattered more than mine. I barely managed to tidy up my tattered dress and walked out of the alley. The first ray of sunrise appeared on the distant horizon, gradually filling the once dark sky with golden light. It was a beautiful sight, so it didn't really matter anymore whether Daniel was by my side to watch it with me. Some moments are meant to be experienced alone. 25 Chapter 18. The police station. I hailed a cab and went straight to the police station. I handed over the bloodstained stiletto and asked the officer, "Does this count as self-defense?" The young female officer looked at me, her clear eyes full of pity and concern. "Miss Liu, don't worry. The marks on your body prove it was an attempted assault. You acted in self-defense." She paused, studying my face carefully. "But are you okay? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine," I said calmly. "It might hurt a little, but I can take care of the wounds myself." "Do you need me to contact your family to come pick you up?" she asked gently. The question hit me harder than the attack itself. Who could I contact? I lowered my eyes and smiled sadly. "No need. Everyone in my family is busy with their own lives." After finishing my statement, I went home and did something I should have done long ago. I found the divorce papers I had prepared weeks earlier, signed them, and sent them directly to Daniel's company. Throughout this entire process, Daniel never contacted me once. Not a single call, not a single text. But I saw from Lily's social media that he had taken her to Yunnan. The reason, of course, was the same as always. She was dying, and it was her last wish. She sat on a swing in the photos, with Daniel pushing her high into the air. Her pristine white dress billowed in the mountain wind like something from a fairy tale. In one post, she wrote, "Daniel, when I die, bury my ashes here. I want to be a free spirit." If you ever think of me, come here and enjoy the view. How romantic. Even in death, she wanted to be so profound, so memorable. She wanted to ensure Daniel would remember her for a lifetime. After reading that post, I coldly deleted Lily from my contacts. I had already guessed Daniel's thoughts anyway. His silence was a form of self-deception. He believed that as long as he didn't speak to me, he could quietly accompany Lily to the end of her life. Then he would return to me, pretending nothing had happened and we could continue our marriage as before. But that was impossible. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. 2 Femme Fatale Chapter 19 Zine. Leaving everything behind before leaving the city, I went to see someone. Alex, a mutual friend of mine and Daniel's. Because of my personality, I hadn't made many friends growing up. Alex barely counted as one, but he was the only person who might understand. I'm leaving, I declared without preamble. He bit down on his cigarette, standing up in shock. No way. You got cancer too. I chuckled bitterly. Of course not. I'm just not staying here anymore. I'm going to another city. What about the Liu family business and legacy? He asked, still processing. I'm giving it up, I said calmly. Then I repeated the words that felt like freedom. I never wanted it to begin with. Everyone knew about Daniel's tangled relationship with his terminally ill ex-girlfriend. They all laughed behind my back, calling me the fool who stayed while her husband played hero to another woman. So when I told my family about the divorce, my aunt's reaction was predictably calculating. It's fine, she said gently, wearing that false maternal smile. In families like ours, even a second marriage won't be without value. I smiled back at her, but my words cut deep. I have no value left, so don't count on it. The Liu family business is yours now. All the things you've always coveted that belonged to my mother, they've been yours for years anyway. I paused, letting the truth sink in. If you don't want the scandal of forcing the eldest daughter of the Liu family to her death, then let me go. For the first time, real hatred appeared in her always soft, gentle eyes. As if out of spite, she lowered her voice and said softly, "It's not your fault, Mia. Your husband would rather be with a dying woman. You really are pitiful." But her words no longer had the power to hurt me. My love and expectations for Daniel had completely vanished, leaving me immune to her cruelty. I told Alex before I left, anyway, if Daniel asks, don't tell him where I went. Alex nodded, understanding more than he said. You have everything, Daniel, I whispered to myself. I have nothing left but this body. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. 2 Farve Chapter 20 Daniel's return. According to Alex, just a few days after I left, Daniel returned to the city. He was alone. Without Lily. I guess she didn't make it. But at least she died between the mountains and the sea, fulfilling her last romantic wish. Daniel called me many times, but I didn't answer. The phone would ring, and I would just watch his name flash on the screen until it went silent. Then he started texting me desperate messages. What's going on? Are you divorcing me, Mia? Please answer your phone. I can explain everything. I didn't reply. There was no need to respond anymore. Some conversations are already over before they begin. Alex told me Daniel was like a caged, restless beast after that. He searched everywhere for me, going to every place we used to visit together. He even stormed into the Liu family mansion. When he burst through the doors, my father and aunt were in the middle of discussing whether they should drag me back and marry me off to a widower in his 50s, who was wealthy and powerful. Mia? Alex marveled over the phone. You should have seen Daniel's expression when he heard that conversation. I thought he was going to tear the whole place apart. Alex also told me about the police investigation. You remember when you reported that assault? The police sent a notice to your house and tried calling you. But those 2 suspects in the attempted assault case, they've been caught. I felt a strange sense of closure hearing that. Daniel went to the police station and asked for details about that night. Alex continued. Perhaps out of sympathy, the female officer told him everything that happened to you. I could imagine Daniel's face when he learned the truth. Then Daniel broke down completely. Alex said quietly. He collapsed on the sidewalk outside the police station, crying like I've never seen a grown man cry. Alex was with him, watching as Daniel lifted his red, tear-streaked eyes and asked desperately, do you know where Mia went? No idea. Alex had shrugged helplessly. You know Mia, her heart's gone cold. None of us are close to her anymore. She only ever cared about you. That seemed to completely crush Daniel. He started obsessively investigating everything I had been through over the years. What happened during those 3 years abroad, every detail of my struggles, every moment of pain I'd endured alone. Every truth he uncovered seemed to break him further. I imagine he deeply regretted the things he said to me, the way he treated me, the choices he made. But there's no undoing the past. Hearing about Daniel's suffering didn't bring me any satisfaction. Only vast indifference. After all, whether I was going through those painful events or remembering them now, I couldn't muster much emotion. Because all my life, I felt like a walking corpse. Only Daniel had ever moved me, giving me a glimmer of hope in the stagnant waters of my existence. But now even that was gone. Chapter 21's The School Reunion. One day, Alex told me about something that made my heart ache in unexpected ways. Our old high school was holding an anniversary celebration, inviting distinguished alumni to attend. Both Daniel's and my invitations had been sent to his address. Since we were still legally married at the time, Daniel went back to visit the teachers, carrying both invitations like they were precious artifacts. The former headmaster remarked nostalgically, "All these years you and Maya have been together and even got married. How rare. Not many young couples make it that far." Daniel stood there motionless, listening to the headmaster recall details from our past that he had long buried in the corners of his memory. He must have remembered how deeply he loved you at 17 or 18. Alex told me. Even after we all got drunk following the college entrance exams, walking down the street, he kept muttering about how he was going to marry Mia one day. Alex paused, his voice growing serious. So as we left the school, I told him the truth. I said, "Stop pretending, Daniel. Maya was abroad for 3 years, and you never even thought about visiting her. You were too busy with Lily. Besides, she's already given up on you now." Daniel was a very smart man. From that one sentence, he figured out that I was still in contact with Alex. So he found a way to get my new address from him. I wasn't surprised. Daniel had always been resourceful when he wanted something badly enough. Chapter 22, The Confrontation. That afternoon, as I came back from the hospital with a bag of medication, I saw Daniel standing at my door. The moment he saw me, his eyes turned red with emotion and desperation. "Mia, you're sick too, aren't you?" His voice was broken, terrified. "No," I replied coldly, holding up the bag. "I'm perfectly healthy. It's just some medication for psychological and mental health issues. I've been taking them for many years now." I paused, letting him absorb this information. "But it's not life-threatening. At least it's not like cancer, which is incurable." With that, I brushed past him and headed toward the courtyard. But Daniel grabbed the hem of my clothes, his grip desperate and pleading. "Mia, I don't want to divorce you." I found his words absurd. My love for him didn't disappear all at once. It slowly eroded over time. With each moment he chose Lily over me. Bit by bit, day by day, until there was nothing left. Now that Lily was gone, he came back to me. What was the point of that? So I calmly suggested, "Actually, if you can't let go of Lily, you could have gone with her." "I don't miss her." Daniel raised his voice, then immediately softened it again. "I told you from the start, Lily had cancer. She was dying. I just felt guilty and wanted to accompany her through her final journey." I've lost count of how many times Daniel has mentioned Lily's illness in front of me, as if because she had cancer, the whole world had to accommodate her unconditionally. As if death, in the face of it, demanded everything to yield. So finally, I laughed, a sound that surprised even me with its bitterness. "What's so special about that? It's just cancer. Just dying, isn't it? She's not the only one who's ever gone through that." Daniel's face went white. "Over the years," I continued, my voice steady and cold, "I've slit my wrists, inhaled charcoal fumes, and taken pills several times. It's just that each time, I was saved." I watched his expression crumble as I spoke. "When she cried in front of you, saying she didn't have long to live, I was actually envious of her. I envied her for being able to die without restraint." The words poured out of me like poison I'd been holding in for years. If I could, I'd have traded places with her. Let me die and let her live, so she could be happy with you. Everyone would get what they wanted. Wouldn't that be better? Daniel stared at me in disbelief, his eyes like two deep, bottomless lakes now filled with wet despair and pain. "Mia, I didn't know. If I had known." But Daniel couldn't finish his sentence. Because he simply couldn't say anything more that would make this better. It was clear he was the one who made the mistakes. He was the one who hurt me. Yet here he was, crying so miserably in front of me, as if I had wronged him somehow. Even at this moment, I didn't feel much emotion toward his tears. Chapter 20:30 The Final Truth. "Daniel," I said quietly, "people change. People can change." I looked at him with something that might have been pity. "So even though you promised at 20 that you'd wait for me, you changed your mind at 21. I never blamed you for that." My voice grew stronger, clearer. "I truly loved you so much that for all these years, you were the only one who could stir my emotions. Even when you gave up on me and ran to Lily without hesitation, I could let it go." I paused, watching him absorb every word. "But that love, You wore it down little by little with your own hands. Whether it's you, or Lily, or that lunatic who's in love with Lily, you all hurt me for the same reason. Daniel's breathing became labored, like he was drowning. Because I had everything. I lived a happy life while you were all stuck in impossible situations, unable to love freely, always lacking something. I smiled then, and it felt like the first genuine smile I'd had in years. But now I've given up everything. I have nothing left. Can you finally let me go? Left to chapter 24. The aftermath. Daniel finally disappeared from my life after that conversation. Occasionally, I would hear bits of news about him from Alex. Strange, dark pieces of information that painted a picture of a man consumed by guilt and rage. For example, the 2 suspects in my assault case suddenly died in prison. No one asked too many questions about how or why. Alex also told me how the Geo family, Daniel's family business, suddenly began ruthlessly suppressing the Liu family's company. They took orders at unreasonable prices just to undercut my family, driving them into financial ruin. In the end, the Liu family went bankrupt. But the Geo family was also severely weakened in the process. As if Daniel was willing to destroy his own empire, just to punish the people who had hurt me. The pure gold shackles that had bound me for over 20 years, finally collapsed and disintegrated. When I heard the news, I was momentarily stunned. Then I went to a nearby convenience store to buy some alcohol. Since I'd had my stomach pumped several times over the years, my stomach had always been fragile, unable to handle alcohol well. Whenever I went to a bar, I would just order a drink and leave it there, not actually drinking it. But moments like these, rare as they are, deserved some celebration. I took a couple of sips, felt a slight pain in my stomach, and put the can down. That's when my phone rang. I answered it without checking the caller ID. It was Daniel, his voice carrying a hint of drunkenness. "Mia," he said, and I could hear the exhaustion in every syllable. "I avenged you." For a moment, it was as if his voice had pulled me back to when I was 14. I'd been bullied at school, and he had fought for me. In the end, he came back to me, his face bruised but triumphant, saying, "I won, Mia. I stood up for you." That was the beginning of my feelings for him. The moment I fell in love with my protector. But I quickly snapped back to reality and hung up. Daniel called back immediately, panic in his voice. "Don't hang up, Mia. I just want to hear you say a few more words." I smiled faintly, feeling strangely calm. "Have you visited Lily recently?" Daniel didn't respond, but his breathing on the other end of the line suddenly became rapid, filled with bone, deep fear. "I forgot to tell you," I said conversationally. "The night you left me to go to Lily," she added me on WeChat. "So every stop on your trip, every little thing you did together, I knew it all." I let that sink in before delivering the final blow. "Daniel, I know you've done a lot for me. But I won't feel any gratitude toward you. You don't deserve it." The night breeze mixed with soft moonlight, gently blowing across my balcony. After a long, long silence, Daniel's voice finally came through again, hoarse and choked with sobs. "Yes, I don't deserve it, Mia. Everything is my fault. I'm the one who deserves to suffer. I beg you, please live well." I said nothing and hung up. Life off a chapter 25 New Beginnings. A couple of days ago, I went to the hospital for a follow-up appointment. The doctor said my emotional state had improved significantly. Maybe escaping the heavy burdens of the past gave me a bit more courage to keep going. It had also been a long time since I dreamed of the teenage me and Daniel. Those memories, once so vivid and painful, were finally fading into something I could observe from a distance. I tossed the beer can into the trash and left the balcony. Tonight, I would go to bed early. Tomorrow, I planned to go to the beach to watch the sunrise. Alone this time, but somehow that felt exactly right. The sun would rise whether Daniel was there or not. The world would keep turning whether our love story had a happy ending or not. And for the first time in my life, I was okay with that. Sometimes, the most beautiful sunrises are the ones we watch by ourselves. Sometimes, the greatest love story is learning to love yourself enough to walk away. Sometimes, losing everything is exactly what we need to find out who we really are. To Fun Fee closing, thank you for joining me on Maya's journey from heartbreak to healing. Her story reminds us that sometimes, the people we love most can hurt us the deepest. But it also shows us that we have the power to choose ourselves, even when it's the hardest choice we'll ever make. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between holding on to love and choosing yourself? Share your experiences. You never know who might need to hear them. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories of love, loss, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. Until next time, remember, you are worth choosing, always.